It's that time again. The best bits of the Conversation Piece podcast. Before I play my intro, don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. I and the algorithm would appreciate it. Thank you. Let's start the convo. Hello, and welcome back to The Conversation Piece with your host, Akila. Let's start off with my most shared episode of the season. Episode 1, I'm Just a Bill Where Woke Goes to Die. Governor DeSantis, some would argue, is becoming an increasingly authoritarian figure who is cherry-picking culture wars. Dubbed Trump with a brain, he and a Republican-controlled House and Senate in the state of Florida are actively pushing legislation that is zeroing in on education. The Stop Woke Act restricts the ways concepts related to systemic racism and sex determination can be discussed in schools. House Bill 999 takes it a step further as it seeks to limit the educational capacities of faculties and students. Part of the bill suggests that history now, quote, suppress or distort significant historical events, end quote. On page 19 of House Bill 999, Section C reads, General education core courses may not suppress or distort significant historical events or include a curriculum that teaches identity politics, such as critical race theory, or defines American history as contrary to the creation of a new nation based on universal principles stated in the Declaration of Independence. Copyright disclaimer. Under Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976, allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. Fair use is permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Nonprofit, educational, or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use.
Woke is really a war against young people, an extreme attack on how they think, exist, speak, and especially how they understand the world they live in. Those attacks reached new heights this week when the Florida Department of Education released shocking new guidelines on how U.S. history, particularly around racial violence, is taught. Florida middle school students will now be taught that slavery gave Black people a personal benefit because they developed beneficial job skills. High school students will now be taught that Black people were also perpetrators of violence during white supremacist massacres, like the one in Rosewood, Florida in 1923. When a white mob destroyed the rural Black town and murdered many of its residents. The state's education department, if you can even call it that, is doing this in a public school system where 64% of its students are people of color. Joining me now is Florida State Senator Chevron Jones. And State Senator, I know that you serve on the Education Committee, so you've been watching this happen up close. One of the many ironies of what's happening here is that the law that requires that African American history be taught in the state of Florida was passed based on paying reparations, or at least on recognizing the Rosewood Massacre itself. That is what sparked the law that says they have to teach African American history. What do you make of the fact that they've said, yeah, you have to teach it, but it has to be, as the vice president called it, propaganda?
Well, first, Joy, thank you for having me. But let's also point out that we're talking about the same department that back in January rejected the curriculum for AP African American Studies for being too woke. This is the same administration that said that Black history brought about no educational value. The Republicans continue to speak out of both sides of their mouth, not just on this issue, but on various issues. So it's not surprising to me that we land right here once again, that even in the standards writing that the Department of Education presented and they voted unanimously on, that this has come about, and this is the direction that the Board of Education has gone in. And I want to make it clear to everyone, I think you've made it clear, and I think so many others have made it clear, that there was no benefit to slavery, and those individuals being enslaved. There was no benefit at all to it. And I also want to point out the fact that all of this is disingenuous. It's totally disengaging from the process and what we as a legislative body should be doing in this moment, considering the fact of the many issues that we as a state should be dealing with to make sure that our children are learning accurate history.
Episode 2 dealt with the boogeyman of CRT, critical race theory. CRT, or critical race theory, is a name given to the body of studies by legal theorists who examine why inequality and racism still persist in the United States, despite having landmark legislation passed during the Civil Rights Movement. In an article in Education Week back in 2021, it mentioned that, quote, the core idea of CRT is that racism is not merely the product of individual bias or prejudice, but something that is embedded in the legal systems and policies, end quote. These policies affect housing, education, healthcare, employment, etc. The irony is that most Americans haven't either heard of CRT, and those who have cannot properly define the term.
Who pays your salary?
A recent school board meeting in a wealthy suburb of Washington, D.C. erupted into pandemonium.
You're teaching children to hate others because of their skin color.
At meetings and protests across the country, conservative activists are accusing schools of teaching critical race theory, a once obscure academic concept that has sparked demonstrations and classroom bans in some states. But a Reuters Ipsos poll out Thursday found that very few Americans know what CRT is, and many who claim to be familiar with it, in fact, embrace a variety of misconceptions and falsehoods circulating among conservative media.
When I heard that teachers and students were having critical race theory shoved down their throats and young white kids were being told that there was something wrong with them because of the color of their skin, I became very concerned.
For example, the Reuters poll found that 22% of those who said they were familiar with critical race theory said they thought CRT is taught in most high schools. It is not. It's mostly a subject for scholars. 33% of respondents said they believe CRT, quote, says that white people are inherently bad or evil, or that, quote, discriminating against white people is the only way to achieve equality. It does not. Critical race theory asserts that racism is woven into the U.S. legal system and ingrained in its primary institutions, creating an uneven playing field for non-white Americans.
We need critical race theory because we need real history.
Among respondents who said they were familiar with CRT, only 5% correctly answered all 7 true-false questions that the poll asked about the history and teachings of critical race theory. Only 32% correctly answered more than 4 of the 7 questions. Despite the misconceptions and misinformation about CRT, a majority of Americans want slavery and its legacy taught in high school. 73% of American adults say they support teaching students learning about racism and its impact on the country.
Is this about CRT or something else? Is critical race theory being used as a Trojan horse for another agenda? It could be both, because another agenda that conservatives want to advance is school choice. Rufo is reported to have said, quote, to get universal school choice, you need really to operate from a premise of universal public school distrust, end quote. Those were his words. Rufo supported Florida House Bill 1557, or otherwise known as the Don't Say Gay Bill. He has made assertions that public school discussing LGBTQAI+ issues is a form of grooming, and that schools are hunting grounds for teachers, and parents need to worry about grooming. Some have viewed his remarks as his goal is to foster anger against public schools, so it turns attention towards private education.
Today, Republican lawmakers in Tallahassee announced a plan for universal school choice. Now, if approved, their bill makes all students eligible to receive state funds for private tuition, regardless of income or ability. Capitol reporter Forrest Saunders takes a look at what's quickly become a controversial idea.
The culmination of more than 2 decades of GOP work on Florida's school vouchers may have arrived.
Today, we empower parents and children to decide the education that best fits their needs.
HB 1 getting filed Thursday morning, seeking to overhaul the system and open up state scholarships for private schooling, even homeschooling, to everyone.
Florida is committed, has always been committed, and will always be committed to providing the best education system possible.
The plan strips the low-income requirements from the Family Empowerment Scholarship, allowing any public school eligible student to apply. Low-income families would still get priority, however. And there's more. families homeschooling can get a slice of state dollars as well for things like online lessons or even private tutoring. Republicans, including former Governor Jeb Bush, have heaped praise on the idea. Florida Senate President, too, suggesting the upper chamber will be in lockstep with the House.
You're going to see bipartisan support for this bill. Maybe I'm going out on a limb, but I don't think so.
Although immediate reactions from Democrats, not positive.
To be clear, there's nothing in this bill that I like.
In a response to the bill's filing, members of the minority caucus called HB1 a betrayal of Florida's public schools. Members worry the result will be more students in private education where state standards for educators and academics don't apply.
Why aren't we taking this extra money and making each one of our public schools a school of excellence?
With super minorities in both chambers of the legislature, it will be tough, if not impossible, for opponents to defeat the bill as more and more Republicans support it. Even so, it will now be one of the big policies to watch when lawmakers gavel in March 7th. At the Capitol, Forrest Saunders, ABC Action News.
You are now listening to the Conversation Piece Podcast.
Hey, you. Yeah, I'm talking to you. Do you have Spotify? If so, turn on the notification button. Episode 3. History is written by the perspective of the victor. His story is not fixed or finite. The more we study from the past, we find new viewpoints and narratives which add to the complexities and nuances. But no one should take their history from a people who have oppressed them, for you will not see yourself reflected in it. Expressing that history should be taught a certain way does no one justice. No one should be educated that they are modern-day oppressors and oppressed. But neglecting the past voices is devaluing the lived experiences of the ancestors. And for the trauma, unfortunately, is still carried to this day. Politico published an essay by Leslie M. Harris in which she expresses, quote, "It is easy to correct facts. It is much harder to correct a viewpoint that consistently ignores and distorts the role of African Americans and race in our history, in order to present white people as an all-powerful and solely in possession to the keys of equality, freedom, and democracy. At least that is the corrective history towards which the 1619 Project is moving, if imperfectly." End quote. In episode 3, me and fellow podcaster CeCe Robinson, host of the Vibe Clinic, shared our reaction to the 1619 Project.
In August of 1619, a ship appeared on this horizon near Point Comfort, a coastal port in the British colony of Virginia. It carried more than 20 enslaved Africans who were sold to the colonists. America was not yet America, but this was the moment it began. No aspect of the country that would be formed here has been untouched by the 250 years of slavery that followed. On the 400th anniversary of this fateful moment, it is finally time to tell our story truthfully. The 1619 Project by Nicole Hannah Jones. Bringing this project into my awareness, but then how it came back up into my awareness, just the other day when we were on the phone, and then looking into it and actually reading it. Like, it's a lot of stuff in here that was never taught to me.
Yeah, my awareness of the project came about, I was watching MSNBC's, I was watching the Joy Reid show, AM Joy, and she mentioned it, and I was like, what is 1619? Because I had never heard that date either, right? We're given certain dates in history that were automatically is a flashpoint of, okay, well, 1776 is the, that's our considered America's birthday, right? Mm-hmm. July 4th. Like, there's certain dates that we know. 1619 was not one of those dates that, like, immediately registered with me. So I'm like, wait a minute. This is in the form of a newspaper, like a whole, like the New York Times, like a special edition. Mm-hmm. I heard special edition. I'm like, let me go and see if Barnes & Nobles has it. So I called and they had it. I'm like, I'm on my way. So they had a few. I got one, thank God, and that's the one you saw at my house.
Yeah.
But Yeah, so I read
I couldn't do that. I had to actually get it from New York Times and wait on them to send it to me. But go ahead.
Yeah. I think they sold out. I think they had to like do a few reprints because it's a very popular project.
Yeah.
The initial response to it is overwhelmingly positive. Of course, there's always pushback. Governor DeSantis pushing back and pretty much an assault on African American AP history in the state of Florida with the College Board. That is like, okay, what is it about our history per se that he finds so threatening, but in his words, lacks educational value? I don't know if that's a quote that was taken out of context, but regardless, I heard lacks educational value when I know for a fact that our history is anything but. I had to dig deeper into this. I'm like, okay, let me see what it is about our history that he finds so offensive, right? And so then, of course, the activists in our community pushed back against him, and he's like, well, okay, fine. I just won't do any AP courses, which is...
That's not fair, but
it's counterproductive because AP studies as a whole in the state of Florida, our state is amongst the highest in participation. Kids take these courses so they can get college credit, right? Like, there's a reason you take AP courses.
Yeah.
So for him to come back with, well, I just won't provide any type of AP courses. And not only that, he doubles down and saying, I'm thinking about overturning the College Board altogether because it's not an elected position. You know, like, no, I'm going to do it because I'm by context, all right? So let me find a quote. Nobody elected the College Board to do anything. They have provided those AP courses for a long time, but there are probably some other vendors who may be able to do that job as good or maybe even a lot better. So the way that I take that, right, is that he wants to pick his own people who probably will push his own agenda.
Teach their own things.
Exactly. He lacks forethought as far as I'm concerned because he has kids now, high school kids that are suing because they're like, listen, we see the value in AP courses. We see the value in AP African American history. And so he's receiving a lot of pushback against that because I just think he's picking culture wars that will benefit him as he is still wavering in his decision about whether or not he wants to run for president of the United States.
That's like, I don't even know how to stomach that.
When you study like you're saying trauma, the trauma that was continuously inflicted on our bodies, just we ain't got to the mind yet.
I don't even think we can begin to touch the mind.
Just the physical body. When you see what they did to us.
Yeah.
It oh my God, it hurts. It hurts. It really does. Because I'm trying to be like, you don't want to get emotional, but it just, I can't imagine. Can you imagine just at any point, anything can be done to you.
Any given
time.
And you don't even know what you doing wrong, or you don't even have to really do anything wrong.
You really don't have to do anything wrong
to have anything done. It could be the end. You could be killed
at any moment.
The amount of fear, the amount of terror.
And when they did this, typically on a plantation, they did this in front of all the other slaves as a deterrent. Like, this is what's going to happen to you if you don't know your place.
Keep playing. That was
I mean, you read, you see about them tar and feathering.
Yeah.
Dousing them with gasoline, burning them alive. Sometimes before they burned them, they castrated them. And then kept it as a treasure. Let's talk about the kept it as a treasure.
And I'm finna take it a layer deeper. I was reading in the 1619 Project about this gentleman that served in our military. And he served in our military. I'm finna tell you, and if I'm gonna speak about this gentleman, let me give him his flowers and say who this gentleman is. Because I've read his story. Mr. Isaac Woodard. He was from South Carolina in 1946. In February of that year, he was a decorated Army veteran. The day he was honorably discharged, he earned a medal. The day of, he got into a little argument with the bus driver because he told the bus driver he had to use the bathroom. And the bus driver must have signaled or low-key called the police. So when the bus driver told him to get off the bus, the police was already standing there waiting. They beat this man. They did not kill him, but they beat him so bad he lost his vision. The same day he was getting off the bus from being honorably discharged from the Army. That hurt me so bad. That hurt me so bad. All of my uncles was in the service. It was everybody's family went to the service and gave and fought and still, you know what I'm talking about in them days, like in Vietnam. Mm-hmm. My daddy went to Vietnam. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Uncles, that was the time for all of them going over there doing all of that. Come back.
The notion that black men not only fought for freedom here, but went abroad and fought for the freedoms of whoever we were, quote unquote, had an issue with, right? And you come back to your state, you're not even given. I mean, could we take advantage of the GI Bill? Absolutely not, because that was not. They didn't construct it that way. But that lifted white families from low income to middle class. But the black people, the black men especially, who went overseas and fought for your freedoms, they couldn't take advantage of that. Black men's service to this country and quote unquote being patriotic it goes back centuries, but they weren't afforded the same rights as someone else. Why?
Well, they weren't afforded the same rights because we just now. I'm going to ask a question, and this is me asking the question, but when really did Black Americans become legal citizens?
I would say 1965.
Did you hear what you just said?
Yes. Because again, that people are like, oh, that happened a long time ago. Okay. No. So you're looking at 250 plus years of, we call it now enslavement. You had 100 plus years of Jim Crow, a system which my mother grew up in.
Yes, mine too.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So, and so it's like
1965.
I would say 1965.
I would agree with you. That's case in point. Case in point. I knew it wasn't too long ago.
I think we're the generation that, or quote unquote, we live in a system that we feel like we have all these rights. My mother grew up in 1944 and she grew up under Jim Crow.
Yeah.
That's crazy to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll say around 1965 with the passing of the Voting Rights Act, Civil Rights Act, which was gutted, by the way. Thank you, Supreme Court. Again, they always move the goalposts. The goalpost is always moving with them. And a lot of this, when you study like the amendments and you study like the laws and policies, when you look at the language, so much has been centered around how do we keep them, and we know what them they're talking about. How do we keep them from advancing? How do we keep them from coming up? Oh, they're doing this? Okay, we have to, they're doing what now? They're doing what now? Okay, so we talk about the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense. So there was a time in California where racial segregation started, especially in the Greenwood district. And this was a result of the booming economy after World War II, where people moved west. But more black people settled in Oakland than white people. And all of a sudden they found themselves being policed a certain way by Oakland's police force.
Sound about right.
So an unarmed black teenager, Matthew Johnson, was murdered. And so,
wow.
Yeah. Time doesn't. Yeah. What's that quote? The past is not dead. It's not even past. So the cops were not arrested. Tensions grew, and about 12,000 troops had to be called in to, quote unquote, police the residents. So the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense was formed by Bobby Seals and Huey Newton, right? They are arming themselves against what they called white aggression. It was founded in 1966. The infamous pictures we see of them standing with the rifles, right? Scared the hell out of white people, right? So what did they do? The Black Panther Party they were working within the law. They had every right to hold those shotguns, right? Second Amendment, right? Okay.
How many of people had those guns?
What? So what did the legislation do? They changed the law. And they always do that with us. We work within the parameters of the law. And when we find, it's not even a loophole. There's no loophole.
No, freedom.
But because you don't like the visual of what that is and what that can potentially do to me, you change the law. And so what did they do? They went and they protested at the state capitol. They still were working within the parameters of the law, and then Ronald Reagan signed that racist piece of legislation into law. Don't get me started on Ronald Reagan, girl.
That's a whole new shot.
Don't get me started on Ronald Reagan. Money, 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 money. Money. Yeah, I didn't know your girl had a voice, did you? If the pandemic revealed anything to all of us, it would definitely reveal income inequalities and how capitalism is not your friend, especially if you're poor. This episode centered more on Black consumerism within the capitalistic society and how Black people were systemically targeted in this country from building wealth. But those of us who have it, damn sure love to spend it.
It is time now for our Equity and Opportunity series, and Frank Holland joins us this morning with a closer look at the growth in Black spending power. Frank.
Hey, good morning to you, Andrew. Black spending power reached a record $1.6 trillion in 2021. The ability to buy, save, and invest more than doubling since 2000. That growth exceeding the full U.S. economy, but actually lagging other ethnic groups. Latinos with a 288% increase. Asians with a 388% increase in spending power. However, other groups, they've also seen an increase in their net worth. Black Americans instead have seen their wealth actually fall by 14%. And with the S&P gaining 27% last year, the value of U.S. homes increasing by 31% last year. Many Black leaders are asking the Black community to really rethink how it spends.
Save money to purchase the most important asset you'll probably ever own, and that's your home. And that to me is equally important. As I said, I'd put it right up there with arguing or campaigning for or supporting voting rights.
I would love to see us spend more money in the stock market. Instead of buying the hottest new thing, buy the stock of the hottest new thing. And that's something that you can also pass down generation to generation.
Home ownership is typically the biggest wealth builder in the Black community. That's actually fallen more than 3% since 2000. And annually, Black families accumulate $300 billion less in wealth than white families, and they save $75 billion less. The racial wealth gap now at more than $11 trillion. Back over to you.
Frankie, the statistics are startling and fascinating in so many different ways. Do business leaders and other experts have thoughts on how to stop the trend and what's really behind it?
Yeah, of course. I mean, some of it is simply allocating more capital to assets that at least have the potential to appreciate, things like houses, stocks, and bonds. Other reasons are systemic, and that's why about 1 out of every 5 Black family has a negative net worth. Right now, systemic issues, redlining in housing, disparities in education, and other issues that are going to take a longer time to address.
Exploitation, which create the sector of poverty in the midst of wealth. Again, we have deluded ourselves into believing the myth that capitalism grew and prospered out of the Protestant ethic of hard work and sacrifice. The fact is that capitalism was built on the exploitation and suffering of Black slaves. And continues to thrive on the exploitation of the poor, both Black and white, both here and abroad. We must also realize that the problems of racial injustice and economic injustice cannot be solved without a radical redistribution of political and economic power.
In 1870, there was a proposal to give land to the former enslaved, such as General William Sherman's 40 acres in a mule proposal. But those measures were defeated, and the wealth gap grew then to 23-1. This period also saw Black people's rights reversed, and a new racist economic and social order reemerged. Here is Eddie Vlad Jr. on MSNBC's Morning Joe explaining the theory held by some critical race theorists that capitalism has racism baked into its structure.
Is racist, and we have to move beyond capitalism. Well, it certainly holds, and let me be very clear, I'm not a critical race theory, but it certainly, as under my understanding, right, with my understanding, it certainly holds the claim that capitalism has its beginnings, right, within the context of the transatlantic slave trade. Not its beginnings, but it actually expands within the context of the transatlantic slave trade. So there is something called racial capitalism that involves, right, the idea that there are certain people who are disposable. And to the extent to which they are disposable because of the color of their skin, it allows for the accumulation of surplus value. So that's a complex argument that is tethered to not just simply critical race theory, but critical legal studies. Is racist, and we have to move beyond capitalism. Well, it certainly holds, and let me be very clear, I'm not a critical race theory, but it certainly, as under my understanding, right, with my understanding, it certainly holds the claim that capitalism has its beginnings, right, within the context of the transatlantic slave trade. Not its beginnings, but it actually expands within the context of the transatlantic slave trade. So there is something called racial capitalism that involves, right, the idea that there are certain people who are disposable. And to the extent to which they are disposable because of the color of their skin, it allows for the accumulation of surplus value. So that's a complex argument that is tethered to not just simply critical race theory, but critical legal studies.
Who I Am was the breakdown of my 23andMe results, which I still find interesting. So, my DNA suggests that I am 41.5% Nigerian, 11.9% Guyanan, Liberian, and Sierra Leone, 6.7% Senegambian and Guinean, 7.9% broadly West African, 8% Angolan and Congolese, 0.2% Southern East African, 0.9% broadly Congolese, and Southern East African. I am 13.9% British and Irish, 3.9% French and German, 2.3% broadly Northwestern European, whatever that means. Well, that's it for Europe. Now this is where it gets spicy. I am 0.6% Filipino and Austronesian, 0.3% Chinese Dai, 0.3% Indonesian, Thai, Khmer, and Myanmar. I hope I said that right. 0.1% Chinese, 0.2% broadly East Asian. My trace ancestry surprised me as well. 0.3% Northern Indian and Pakistani, 0.2% broadly West Asian and North African, and 0.1% broadly Central and South Asian. I also have 0.5% unassigned ancestry, in which I did not know that there are unassigned humans walking around. The physical traits on my report were the section I found the most interesting. For instance, from my sample, it was predicted that I don't have freckles. I do not. I don't have dimples. I do not. I don't have a cleft chin. I do not. I have dark brown eyes. My ring finger is longer than my index finger. Other traits I found interesting. I have a 50-50 chance of matching a music pitch. I supposedly can't smell asparagus. Wrong. I can detect bitter tastes. I hope so. I am likely to get bunions when I get older. Thank you, mother. I supposedly don't like the taste of cilantro. Wrong again. I am likely to have a fear of heights. I prefer vanilla ice cream over chocolate. Wrong again. For being lactose intolerant, I love ice cream. Just don't stand downwind from me. I am less likely to hate chewing sounds. I mean, as long as the food stays in the mouth, I'm chill. I'm more likely to get bitten by mosquitoes. Okay. Oh my god, yes. So, okay. Apparently, the females like the way my body smells. So female mosquitoes can smell their food and they have preferences based off body odor and breath. Although anyone can get bitten, some of us are considered more delicious. Bon appetit. I'm just kidding. They carry diseases. This was my most played episode of the season, and perhaps the one that gave me the most anxiety. Considering myself a creative and someone who likes to write poetry, trying to break down one of today's most brilliant minds, who just so happens to be the youngest poet laureate to deliver an inaugural speech, and one Miss Amanda Gorman, yeah, I had heart palpitations. But it is more so why I had to do this episode. In May 2023, Amanda had one of her books banned from being taught in elementary schools. On May 23rd, 2023, Amanda tweeted this, quote, "I'm gutted. Because of one parent's complaint, my inaugural poem, The Hill We Climb, has been banned from an elementary school in Miami-Dade County, Florida. Book bans aren't new, but they have been on the rise according to the ALA. 40% more books were challenged in 2022 compared to 2021. What's more, often all it takes to remove these works from our libraries and schools is a single objection. And let's be clear, most of the forbidden books are authors who have struggled for generations to get on bookshelves. The majority of these censored works are by queer and non-white voices. I wrote The Hill We Climb so that all young people could see themselves in a historical moment. Ever since, I received countless letters and voices from children inspired by The Hill We Climb to write their own poems. Robbing children of the chance to find their voices in literature is a violation of their right to free thought and free speech. What can we do? We must speak out and have our voices heard. Together, this is the hill we just won't climb, but a hill we will conquer." End quote. If you want to hear my breakdown of her inaugural poem, and why wouldn't you, check out Amanda Gorman Claps Back. Amanda Gorman has the last laugh, as she has another book being released. I want to share her interview with Gayle King as a testimony as to why she is so special. And if I am around in 2023, she has my vote.
So starting from that, where does your confidence come from today?
I think my confidence wasn't necessarily something that I taught myself. It's something that was modeled for me. I was raised by a single mother, and I think the way in which she would walk through the space and kind of hold herself as a Black woman, that was a great type of kind of symbol for me to look at and go, this is how I can continue in this world.
She says her new book will serve as a record of the baggage and the blessings we've carried through this pandemic. Every cough seemed catastrophe. Every person a potential peril. We mapped each sneeze and sniffle. I thought, that's so true. I remember somebody sneezing and coming, like, oh, what was that? Certain the virus we had run away from was now running through us. What made you write that?
It was part of me trying to document, I think, the social, emotional reality of what a pandemic is. I can give you facts, I can give you numbers, I can give you deaths, but when you're walking through life afraid to breathe, afraid to be close and proximate to people, I think that does something to the body and to the soul.
There's no power like home. We are sick of home, homesick. The mask around our ear hung itself into the year.
I'm so honored that you like my wordplay or my
I do. Let's talk about your wordplay.
Yes.
And your process with that.
I think I really wanted to take certain phrases and turn them on their heads, not necessarily to kind of feel smart or pat myself on the back. But when you look at it, in many ways, we're really lacking language around how to grieve, how to be at loss. I wanted to create rhetoric that could more accurately represent our experience.
What is your process when you start to write a poem? Is there a certain thing?
Wow, I'm trying to think of my process, and it's really messy, and it can look like different things. And I think with the moments of turns of phrase in the book, it was less so me at my desk trying to write puns, but more so me walking through the world, walking down the street, seeing signs and really listening to people and hearing the words that we use to each other, about each other.
I find some conspiracies funny and intriguing. So I had fun with the episode, They Cloned You People with Conspiracies.
Yeah, the Iran-Contra affair, we all know what the Iran-Contra affair was about. Hell, they done made a movie called Snowfall about it. It was about the dope, Los Angeles, Miami, New York, putting all that crack cocaine in the neighborhoods and stuff like that to fund some shit they wanted to do. but they couldn't outright do it. So what they do? They poison our neighborhoods, poison our brothers and sisters and grandmothers and mothers and brothers and sisters, and pretty much just decimated the black community. The same politician that sat there in 1987 and said he don't really want his kids going to school with these kind of kids because they're animals, you know.
Biden said that?
Oh, yeah, your boy Biden. Yeah, you better look up on your boy Biden. Look up on your boy Biden. Yeah, the same motherfucker y'all out there voting for, like, oh, but you got a black woman and this and that, this and that.
Listen, that wasn't my rationale. My rationale was anything had to be better than Trump. Anything.
But listen, that's the thing about it. That is the thing about it. People always say, well, anything better than Trump. Trump is a racist. Trump is that. Trump is this. Trump is that. Okay, how you gonna call somebody racist when you done put racist, like you done said racist things, you done push racist legislation for the past 40-some years?
They all shit. They're all shit. Like, nobody that we put in there is gonna be qualified to do this job.
So you know they all shit, but one thing I did like about Trump wasn't a politician. He's a businessman. So when he got in the office, he
has gone bankrupt 5 times.
Hey, that's the American way.
So he wasn't a good business.
Hold up. He went bankrupt 5 times, right? If you think about it, our government set it up so you can do shit like that. You can go
but
you can go bankrupt and come up.
Exactly.
Yeah, you can.
Our government set it up like that, though.
Pushing way worse, more toxins. Like, yeah, I mean, I'm appreciative of Trump. I'm appreciative that he did what he did because he woke up a lot of other people that were still asleep. However, that type of toxicity cannot be in there that much longer. It's combustion.
Well, but it's okay to have that same kind of toxicity for the past 56 years as long as it's controlled toxicity.
Wait a minute, but there is a subtle difference. There is a subtle difference, and I agree with y'all about ain't none on shit. I'm just, you know what I'm saying? Ain't none on shit. But there is a such thing called redemption.
Thank you, that part.
And I'm gonna tell you this. Hold on. I'm gonna tell you this. I could have did this, that, and the third. But if I come to terms with what I do, what that mean?
What does it mean?
What that mean? I've evolved from the things that I've done.
Okay.
So what does that put me? Does that still put me in the pig pen doing those type of things?
Listen,
no, it don't. That's the difference between Biden and Trump, though.
Okay, if you still messing with the pig, if you still messing with that pig, you still in the pig pen. Damn your redemption, you still messing with the same pig.
But what if you ain't messing with the pig?
How about since we voted him in, we voted him in as a people.
Nah, no, that's y'all.
3 of the 4 of us.
You on your own.
3 of the 4. 75% of the panel did.
Huh?
Yeah. 75%.
That's all fine and good. That's all fine and good.
Let's give it a chance to see if this man has evolved in any type. If he hasn't,
let's see. Because I agree with you.
Okay.
Now he did. Okay.
So y'all talking about giving this man a chance, right? This seems he
we ain't got no choice.
Right? Huh?
We ain't got no choice. He there. So it's up to him. But he know most of the votes based on his redemption. So he know he gonna have to prove, he gonna have to prove something though. But he the only one in there that gonna have to prove something though. He gonna have to.
You know, the power of the people gonna say you out of that.
Listen. This man said.
They gonna tear his ass up.
This man said you're not black if you don't vote for me. You're not black. Listen. This man said you're not black.
I'm glad I missed all this.
This man said you're not black. You're not a true black if you don't vote for me.
Yeah.
This man said. Listen.
You're taking it out of context.
Right. That's what I'm saying.
You're taking it out of context.
Okay, take this out of context. I got my hot sauce in my purse. It's the same shit.
That's pandering. That's That's pandering.
But listen, Killer, it's the same thing though. Hillary said it. Black women was like, "Hey, hold up, Hillary, you cool and all, but you keep your damn hot sauce in your purse." You dig what I'm saying?
In the first half of the year 2023, Billboard and Vibe released their list of their top 50 rappers of all time in honor of the 50th anniversary in the genre of hip-hop. But, as you can imagine, this had some people going,
How, Sway?
How Sway indeed. Torre, Michael Smith, and Bomani Jones discussed their love of hip-hop, and when the subject of their favorite MC was brought up, or more specifically, when Jay-Z was brought up, they encapsulated perfectly what the entire argument is when the best is mentioned. What is the ultimate metric in which we determine success in this world?
Okay, number one MC of all time?
I said KRS-One last time, and I'm going to say KRS-One.
Okay, all right. It's Black Thought for me. Okay, I'm not mad at that. It's been Black Thought for me. I think what Jay-Z's accomplished is just bigger. But how you define? But see,
that's like
how you define.
If we're talking about like a capitalistic construction, Jay-Z wins, right?
Sure.
If you're like, I have elevated myself from this place and gotten to this other place. How good it is to actually be in that place, completely different discussion.
Starting from 50 to 1. Rick Ross, Rev Run, Melly Mel, MC Lyte, Jadakiss, Ice-T, Queen Latifah, Bun B, Redman, E40, Dr. Dre, Ludacris, Gucci Mane, Common, Mos Def, Future, Chuck D, Busta Rhymes, T.I., Lil' Kim, Lauryn Hill, Pusha T, Black Thought, Q-Tip, Big Pun, Method Man, KRS-One, Curtis Blow, Ghostface Killah, DMX, Big Daddy Kane, Missy Elliott, Ice Cube, 50 Cent, Scarface, J. Cole, LL Cool J, Rakim, Andre 3000, Kanye West, Nicki Minaj, Snoop Dogg, Drake, Lil Wayne, Biggie, Eminem, Tupac, Nas, Kendrick Lamar, and Jay-Z. According to Billboard and Vibe, the ranking is based off their artists' overall work, cultural impact, longevity, lyrics, and flow. But, to me, that is all subjective. See, in my opinion, because the irony of Rakim being ranked at number 13 when he had an impact on over half of the rappers on that list is laughable. But to each their own. I'm not even going to read the comments that this list generated because I swear these lists just serve as a distraction point. Art, regardless of the platform, is subjective, and it always will be. How do you quantify who is the best unless you provide the appropriate and reasonable metric like, sales? And even sales are controversial.
And Nas is number 3. How?
I don't know. See,
I don't get that. How Kendrick Lamar should have been number 1. Kendrick Lamar, they
based on what? Okay, are we basing this off of sales? Are we basing this off
Okay, how do they do it?
I don't know. Again, this is subjective.
I'm basing it off of lyricism.
My top 5, I would say right now at the moment, my favorite artist is Karol G. She is a Latina. She's a reggaetonera, and what that is that's Spanish hip hop. She's Colombian, and I feel like she's been very influential at the moment in my life because she basically sings about being a bad bitch and how she's unstoppable and she's capable of anything. And I think that's very important, especially with uplifting women and women empowerment. I think I like the beat of her music. I like her lyrics, and I like that she's very uplifting. So that's my first and top favorite artist at the moment. Second, I love Rihanna. Rihanna also very influential. She's a businesswoman with her, Fenty and Savage and all of her companies. And same thing, she's always saying about being a bad bitch. I love her style. I love that she can be both glam and kind of like edgy, and I love that about her. That's my second. My third is I love Jennifer Lopez. Also, same thing, very influential. A successful businesswoman. I love that she is in. I love the movies that she's in. I love that she's also an actress, and I love the movies that she's in. I love her music. She's not the greatest singer, but I love her. I love her music. How like the pop about them. The dancing and everything. I love that. I love it. I love how she dances, and I love that she's Boricua. She's Puerto Rican like me. That's my third. My fourth is I love J. Cole. He's one of my favorite rappers. He's very real. I like how his lyrics aren't always just about sex, money, and drugs and all that stuff. Like I love that he is a genuine singer and rapper. I like that he's also influential to young people. Like I like that he doesn't sing only about drugs and sex and money, and I like that he can also sing about things that happen in real life. Society, I like that he raps about those kinds of things, and I like that he could be that other kind of rapper, that other kind of voice for like the kids or for youth, people that are also listening to rap nowadays. I like that his style is different than all these other rappers too. In terms of he doesn't need like auto tune, and he can just spit out a verse without any like help or anything. Like I really like that about J. Cole. And then my last favorite artist is Jay-Z, and I think it's because it's interesting that he's also my favorite because J. Cole used to work with him when he was in Rock Nation under Jay-Z, signed under Jay-Z, and I like that about Jay-Z too, is like they have very similar styles where they sing about society, what's going on. I like Jay-Z's flow. I like that he's from New York, and I like his style as well. I like that he can also spit really good verses without just talking about like drugs, money, and sex, basically.
Scarface, Tupac, Ice Cube, JT Money, and DMX. For one, I grew up listening to them, and for two, I feel like you can identify with something you read, something you listen to. It resonates with you more. All five of these gentlemen, these rap artists, like I said, I grew up with them. Scarface dealt with a lot of mental issues. A lot of black folks like to deal with mental issues, but it's something that we had to deal with. And that's what resonated with me. He put it in his music. So when he put it in his music, it's just like you listening to it, and I thought, oh, okay, maybe I can, deal with things a little bit better. Tupac, a revolutionary, going through the things he went through. It wasn't so much his music; it was his lifestyle, the people he had around him. We say he was self-destructive, but I believe he was a cautionary tale. His music was beautiful. What he was about was beautiful, but his lifestyle was a cautionary tale to every young black man in America. We got to be careful. We got to be careful how we do things, when we do things, and the people we have around us. Because as much as we want to blame white people for everything, it's our own kind doing it to us. Ice Cube, being young, freshman in high school, Ice Cube was like the model for it. He started his own company, did his own thing. Respectable man. And knew his history, knew about his people. He knew the tricks of the trade. He was very pro-black, and I always like that about Ice Cube. JT Money, what can I say? I'm from the South. I'm from Fort Myers, Florida. I hung in the streets. I did a lot of things in the streets. And that was just like a big brother. You pop in and pop the tape in, listen to it like your big brother was talking to you. How to move and how not to move. How to have fun and what to watch for. DMX, the man dealt with a lot of substance. He dealt with a lot of trauma. He dealt with a lot. And it seemed like to me, he was very spiritual. That's what resonated with this. Thinking about DMX now and just talking to him, trying to find the words to express how I felt about DMX and why I put him in my top 5. I get a little chill just thinking about some of his music. We can with a hood at and stuff like that, but my favorite song by DMX is The Convo. That really touched me. It ain't really about the money and the fame and stuff like that. It's about how you touch people, how you connect with people.
Copyright disclaimer. Under Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976, allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. Fair use is permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Nonprofit, educational, or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use. My latest episode dealt with influencer culture and the obsession with materialism, likes, views, and how society is being influenced towards self-destruction only to have artificial intelligence overtake the human being. We are in a dying civilization, but half of us have our heads buried into our cell phones to even notice. Here's a clip from the brilliant 2018 documentary from Lauren Greenfield called Generation Wealth, now streaming on Prime Video.
Global capitalism has done a very effective job of destroying culture. That inability to hear the voices of the past, to understand traditions, makes it much harder for us to grasp who we are and where we came from. Authentic culture holds up other values, forces us to be self-critical, to look at ourselves. At the end of a decayed culture, we retreat into our own comforting illusions. We build walls to cope with the reality around us.
It's not about me, it's about you, believe me.
People have a hard time separating reality from entertainment, because there is a line. It's a thick line. It's not a thin one.
Corporate capitalism pushes people towards this constant search for the next adrenaline rush. People seek that momentary ecstasy to escape from a darker and darker reality. The population is diverted. Sexual hedonism predominates throughout the society. We are dying in the same way that other empires have died throughout history. The difference is that this time, when we go down, the whole planet's going to go with us.
Well, that wraps up another season. Your girl has a novel or two in her, so I'll be splitting my time between my podcast and my writing. But I will be back, inshallah. That means God willing in Arabic, because you never know. I'm also trying to get my life in order because I don't know how observant you all are, but the end is here. You can call me crazy if you want to, but I want to go to the good place. I also plan on doing video podcasts in the future, so I will need a minute to figure out the logistics of that, because right now, your girl is in a closet. No, not in the way you're thinking. I record in a closet because of the sound quality. It sounds better in playback. Although, I could do a podcast from my closet, but what would I call that? Like, in the closet podcast? The closeted podcast? What's that sound? I don't know. I'll work on it. Help your girl out with some suggestions. Oh, also, don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. I'll talk to you later. Peace.